Strava is a social network of more than 30 million members, who use it to track and upload data about their workouts. Over 1.5 billion activities, mainly runs and bike rides, have been uploaded, and many of these are used by the Silicon Valley company to create a heat map, which helps users devise routes. The heat map became front-page news in January when it was found that, because military personnel were using the app to track their workouts, it was possible to make out the outlines of sensitive sites such as U.S. drone bases in the African states Djibouti, Niger and Cameroon, military bases in the Falkland Islands, Afghanistan and Syria, and even what are assumed to be the running activities of embassy staff in Pyongyang, North Korea. It made visible the names of military personnel who had recorded fast times for particular user-defined segments of runs and photographs on their profiles, which could have compromised individuals' safety at home and allowed enemies to gather data about movements within the bases. Quick guide: the bases themselves are generally visible on satellite views from commercial providers such as Google and Apple, but their use is frequently unclear. The running and cycling activity shared by Strava marks them out as distinct from the local neighborhood, and allows analysts to mark them out as heavily staffed by Western military personnel. Some bases are not visible at all on satellite views, however. That may be because they were put up after the most recent satellite imagery was updated, or torn down as military priorities changed. For instance, Camp Bastion, a UK base in Afghanistan, is visible on Strava's map, but the actual base closed in 2014. Thank you for your feedback. Britain's Ministry of Defence issued new guidance for personnel and described the heat map as a clear risk to security, and the US Defense Secretary James Mattis ordered a review of how personnel use fitness apps. Was it worrying to you when Strava became an app of interest to the US military authorities? I don't think we had anticipated how many military personnel are using our app, but when the news stories broke we wanted to dig in, certainly understand more and take responsibility, and work very closely with officials to make sure people know how to use the product. Were you surprised that the military hadn't briefed their personnel about these kinds of issues before? I think they do brief their personnel about how to use products like ours. We weren't interested in ascribing blame. We wanted to figure out if there were things we could do to communicate more clearly and just improve the simplicity of how our settings work. The changes were well received. We update the heat map more frequently so that people's changes to their settings are reflected. We made sure there was a greater density of athletes in order to show heat on the map, and we require someone to be logged into Strava to view heat maps. We built heat maps for our community. Our community loves routes, loves using community-sourced data in order to find places to run and ride. We didn't anticipate it to be used in these different ways, and so we took steps to make sure that it could be used for its intended use. If the military personnel are changing their privacy settings, how long will it take for these outlines of military bases to disappear? I understand the heat maps are an aggregation of 2 years' worth of activity, so will it take 2 years for them to fade away? We have never shown activities that are marked private or have been excluded, because there is a setting to exclude any activity from the heat map. And with more frequent refresh, the heat map now updates monthly. If you changed your settings today, all the activity marked private would no longer appear. But not all military personnel appear to be changing the privacy settings on historic activities, because bases that were reported as being visible on heat maps are still visible. Well, I don't know what sites you are referring to, but your definition of what a sensitive site is might not be the same as theirs. Was the heat map story bad for the business? Look, anytime privacy in the military and brightly colored maps gets combined, it certainly puts us into a place of wanting to respond accurately. Certainly a lot of attention dialed on the company at that time. It was a heightened phase for us, but I think it's been net positive because of the way that we approached it. A heat map showing the outlines of a military base in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. Photographed Strava heat map. Do you feel the recent negative stories about Facebook have thrown some shade across social networks? I think that it has opened people's eyes, opened them to question what kind of community they want to be in, and I think the pendulum is swinging from generalized and unqualified networks to ones that are more vertical and qualified. Taking the sports case, having my mom or a high school friend giving me support on my bike activities isn't as powerful as the people who I run, swim and cycle with. People are looking for an alternative social network, and we are very different. We're not trying to maximize time spent in our app, we want people to put their phone down and sweat together. Our service encourages you to do something in your life that involves sweat. Strava is one of the few social networks that can charge a subscription. Why do you think you're able to do that? We do have a premium subscription business that is the overwhelming bulk of our revenues. We have a free product, but usually there are triggers to becoming a paid subscriber, buying a new device like a Garmin or an Apple Watch which has heart rate data and wanting to see more analysis around it, or people enter a race and want to do interval training to improve their speed, so they like to see analytics around that. So you don't have a team of neuroscientists working on dopamine hits for your users. No, the distinction is that we are building a social network where supporting each other is the key data point and the activities that you do are real. Our currency is effort, and if there are any echo chambers they ring of positivity, people know you've just come back from injury, that it was raining sideways during your run, that you cycled up a huge amount of elevation. It's a positive place. A Glasgow Caledonian study shows 83% of people said Strava improved their motivation to exercise and 80% said it improved their overall fitness. There's a very supportive, encouraging environment, the activity being the center of our content. Last year a female quartz writer and runner detailed how she found the privacy settings difficult to navigate and was disturbed to find she was receiving kudos, Strava's equivalent of a like from people she didn't know, and she was concerned these people could track where she lived. Rose of Quartz was in enhanced privacy mode, which is the middle space between being fully private and fully public. There were many toggles in that enhanced privacy where you would choose whether or not to participate in leaderboards, whether or not to participate in group activities, or whether or not to show up in flybys or clubs. This year we have changed the default settings on enhanced privacy. We default to out of those additional settings and you can go back in and tailor. What we're trying to get is a place where the top level is incredibly simplified, based on who you want to follow and want following you, and if you want to go in and fine-tune it in a more expert fashion, those toggles are there. There is an opportunity to make them easier to understand. You don't share data with third parties, such as Facebook, Google or other advertising platforms. As a user myself, I wasn't aware of that until researching for this interview. Unfortunately, a lot of companies get conflated and stuck together. We try very hard to make it very clear that we are not selling people's data to third parties. So no. Subscription is our primary business model. We don't sell location or heart rate data onward. We don't sell to third parties. We also don't background track. There's a misperception that we are tracking people when the app is not open. We don't. Strava dominates the cycling market, but the running app market is very competitive, with Asics, Adidas and Under Armour all buying up your competitors such as Runtastic and MapMyron, so they can use data to sell users sportswear. The traditional competitors have been acquired and the business models have shifted to selling apparel and shoes. That is not our model. Our model is a subscription one, and we do think that's a distinction. We have ambitions to be the next great sports brand of the 21st century. This community is the place where fitness and sport connect digitally, is both our present and our future. A lot of users' frustrations with Strava are down to frustrations with their devices, particularly Garmin cycling computers. If you built the hardware, wouldn't that reduce the glitches? I say we are committed to being the center of connected fitness. That is our strategy, and I think that requires a level of independence that we've maintained. But we do understand the frustration of an inaccurate recording of someone's workout. It's a terrible experience. I had it happen myself several times, and it matters to us to work with our partners to get this right to make sure we're not dropping segments or GPS points. I was in the hardware business previously. It's very hard to have sustained profitability. The engineers that we have, we point them towards making sure they are integrated experiences. That means that the device shows up in Strava in a really excellent way, and Strava comes with that device, so for example you can see live segments on the device. That's the kind of fun integration we'd rather point engineering resource towards, rather than try to make the best heart rate device. And when you're going for a run yourself, when you've got down to the locker room, got changed but realized you've forgotten your watch, do you still go for the run? Laughs, yeah, I do, but I think some people might not. My life hack right now. I have 2 young boys who cycle while I run, so they'll get out ahead of me and set my pace. We did 10.5 miles yesterday. The only way I've got them to the end of that distance is being able to show them the photos we took in the route. There's something to be said for taking what feels mundane and laborious, and documenting it in an app like ours.